back to another episode here at YASHAV Ministry with Casa de Israel. Like I always say, thank you for being there. Today's going to be short, quick, and simple, but we're going to talk about Torah portion by Vayeshev. But before we do that, let's do a Torah blessing. Bless Adonai who is blessed. Bless Adonai who is blessed now and forever. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who has chosen us from among the peoples and has given us the Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai, who gives the Torah. Amen. So, this week's Torah portion is Vayeshev, and it starts with Jacob and his son Joseph. And it highlights how Joseph, in a way, is favored by Jacob, and how there's special aspects of Joseph that his brothers envy or his brothers are jealous of. But our focus for this video won't be that. It will be chapter 38, where we analyze Yehuda and Tamar. And it's a very interesting story that teaches us that Yehuda in that moment in time morally was in a decline, and he was in a very low spot in his life. So we're going to read chapter 38 and we're going to analyze Yehuda, okay? And Tamar. So chapter 38 starts the following way. And it came about at that time that Yehuda departed from his brothers and visited a certain Adullamite, whose name was Hira. Yehuda saw there a daughter of a certain Canaanite whose name was Shua, and he took her and went into her. So she conceived and bore him a son, and he named him Now, we have to pay attention that Yehuda is not only with a friend that is a Canaanite, but he also is mixing his seed with the Canaanite. He's basically establishing that promise that was given to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that is supposed to be passed down to him. Now he has been in relationship with a Canaanite. Okay, so morally you see that Yehuda in this moment in time is separated from the purpose, right, or the mission that Adonai has given to the forefathers. Okay, let's keep reading. Then she conceived again and bore a son named him Onan, and she bore still another son named him Selah, and it was at Shesib that she bore him. Now Yehuda took a wife from his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. But Yehuda's firstborn, was evil in the sight of the Lord, so the Lord took his life. Then Yehuda said to Onan, "Go into your brother's wife and perform your duty as a brother-in-law to her, and raise up an offspring for your brother." Onan knew that the offspring would not be his. So when he went into his brother's wife, he wasted his seed on the ground in order not to give offspring to his brother. But what he did was displeasing in the sight of the Lord. So he took his life also. Then Yehuda said to his daughter-in-law Tamar, "Remain a widow in your father's house until my son Selah grows up." For he thought, "I am afraid that he too may die like his brothers." So Tamar went and lived in her father's house. Now after considerable time, Shua's daughter, the wife of Yehuda, died. And when the time of mourning was ended, Yehuda went up to the shepherds at Timnah, he and his friend Hira the Adullamite. It was told to Tamar, "Behold, your father-in-law is going to Timnah to shear his sheep." So she removed her widow's garment and covered herself with a veil and wrapped herself and sat in a gateway of Enaim, which is on the road of Timnah. For she saw that Selah had grown up, and she had not been given to him as a wife. So now we're seeing that Yehuda has 3 sons. The first one is given in marriage with Tamar. He dies because apparently, as a person, he was evil, and Adonai decided that he would not live no more. Now, his brother Onan was supposed to give honor not only to his family but to the descendants of Yehuda, right? And so Onan didn't see the bigger picture in a sense, right? He was just seeing himself, and that culturally, that son wouldn't be his, it would be his brother. So instead of bringing honor to his brother and to his father's descendancy, he decided to be selfish, and he didn't go through what the cultural background established that if a brother died, like if you had a brother and he dies, then you were to, in a way, give his wife a child so that his wife will have a descendant and that the family will have a continuation. And yes, it is weird, but remember, these are customs of the time. Okay? Now, the honor of Tamar is being shamed in this moment because two sons go and she is not being honored, right? And now Yehuda gives a promise that he will give him or give her his third son when he grows up. But as we just finished reading, he grew up and Yehuda's wife passed away and Tamar was not given in marriage. She was left in her father's house as a widow. So Yehuda has not done justice to her, but now Yehuda is going into Tamar again. And so we're going to see what Yehuda's actions are. Okay? So let's keep reading. When Yehuda saw her, he thought she was a harlot, for she had covered her face. So he turned aside to her by the road and said, "Here now, let me come in to you." For he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. And she said, "What will you give me, that you may come into me?" He said, "Therefore, I will send you a young goat from the flock." She said, "Moreover, will you give a pledge until you send it?" He said, "What pledge shall I give you?" And she said, "Your seal and your cord, your staff that is in your hand." So he gave them to her and went into her, and she conceived by him. Then she arose and departed, and removed her veil, and put on her widow's garment. When Yehuda sent the young goat by his friend the Adulamite to receive the pledge from the woman's hand, he did not find her. He asked the man of her place, saying, "Where is the temple prostitute who was by the road at Enaim?" Which they said, "There has been no temple prostitute here." Now it gets interesting because Yehuda is not only friends with the Canaanite, marries a Canaanite, has obviously kids and children with the Canaanite woman, but now obviously he marries his sons to the Canaanite women. And as his wife dies, he is going back to where he previously found his wife and is thought to laid with a prostitute from the temple. Okay? And so we're going to read a little bit about this and we're going to continue. So this is the Sundervan Illustrated Bible. Here it's talking about the custom of the brother-in-law, right? So it says the custom of deliberate marriage mandated that if a man died without a male heir, a relative was to sear a son with the widow on his behalf. A number of possible motives or anticipated results may be underlying this custom, and the issue is still disputed. Now, a widow without children was a woman without legal, economic, or social status, a woman without a household. Yehuda here relegates Tamar through his continuing authority over her to the protection of her father's household. This is unusual, and the dowry would have been initially paid by her father precisely for the purpose of supporting her in a situation such as this. It is unlikely that her father would have had any legal obligation to support her. Her widow's clothes would be sufficiently distinctive to mark her station, but our sources are inadequate for determining what these clothes look like. Now, sheep shearing time was payday, and the income windfall, the celebratory atmosphere, and the isolation of the men from the family compound all were conducive to the activity of prostitutes. Prostitution in the ancient world can be divided into a number of different categories, and there's some dispute concerning the labels and descriptions. Right? Particularly debatable is what is called sacred prostitution, in which the proceeds go to the temple, a cultic prostitution which is performed as a rite of fertility. The later is only attested in a relation to the tightly regulated sacred marriage rites and was not engaged in by the public at large. It is not legitimately labeled prostitution. With regard to the former, though, undoubtedly the secular prostitutes might congregate around the temple, especially at feast times. Evidence is lacking for the temples profiting from or organizing prostitution. Okay? Now, Yehuda looking for a prostitute in an ancient temple from who knows what God in this moment, right? Because it's a Canaanite village, it's a Canaanite town, and his friend is a Canaanite. We are starting to see how morally Yehuda in this moment in time has been in a depleting state, and we see how his actions towards his brother Joseph in the chapters before and after dictate where they were morally as brothers, how they have been influenced by their surrounding communities, and how they had assimilated. And that action is what obviously pollutes Israel in the long run. Okay, so we're going to finish the story and then we'll close out. Then Yehuda said, let her keep them, otherwise we will become a laughing stock. After all, I sent this young goat, but you did not find her. It was about 3 months later that Yehuda was informed, your daughter-in-law Tamar has played the harlot, and behold, she's also with a child by harlotry. Then Yehuda said, bring her out and let her be burned. It was a while she was being brought out that she sent to her father-in-law, saying, I am with child by the man to whom these things belong. And she said, please examine and see whose signet ring and cords and staff are these. Yehuda recognized them and said, she's more righteous than I, inasmuch as I did not give her to my son Selah, and he did not have relations with her again. And it came about at that time that she gave birth, that behold, there were twins in her womb. Moreover, it took place while she was giving birth. One put out a hand, and the midwife took and tied the scarlet thread on his hand, saying, this came out first. But it came about as he drew back his hand, behold, his brother came out. Then she said, what a breach you have made for yourself. So he was named Perez. Afterward, his brother came out, who had the scarlet thread on his hand, and he was named Serah. In this story of Judah, the ending is interesting because she has twins. She has two sons, Perez and Serah. But we see how Yehuda morally established that he had two moral standards that he was living by. And so when Tamar did justice to herself and respected herself and took it upon her hands to defend her honor, Yehuda demonstrated that he had two moral standards that he stood by. And he was in harlotry himself. He was looking for harlots. He was sleeping with temple prostitutes, as the text is implying. And so he was with the Canaanites. He was assimilated in this moment in where he decided that Tamar should die for being a harlot in his eyes. And he cast a judgment the moment that she demonstrated that it was him that she was having with child from. He remembered that he had not fulfilled his word. And not only that he wasn't fulfilling his word, but that he morally was misrepresenting the honor that he was supposed to represent. And so the story gives us a very interesting perspective on how, as humans, we live a double standard. And sometimes the way that we rush to judge or accuse or to point the finger is based on the circumstances, and sometimes if we are the ones that are going to be affected or not. And so always try to keep a straight and honest and just mind. And if you learn from Yehuda, one thing is for sure: if you let chaos come into your life, chaos will dictate the direction of your life. And Tamar decided that even though she was in a realm of chaos and that Yehuda was not honoring her, she decided to honor herself, and she was given the blessing of having two sons and named Perez and Serah. And obviously she taught a lesson to Yehuda in where he acknowledged she was more just and righteous than him. So I hope you guys had a good time. If you liked it, like I always say, if you like the content that we have on our channel, like and subscribe. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, put it on the comment section down below. As I'm recording, it's Thanksgiving, so I hope you guys have or hatch a great Thanksgiving dinner with your families, and are thankful for life. I'm thankful for you guys, and I'm thankful for my family as well. So have a great week. Shavua Tov and Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.